Welcome back to Big Fish Middle Kingdom, Big Fish Side Dish, and the Fretful Laowai Radio Hour. This episode we are calling the Fretful Laowai Summer Vacation Show, and I'm here with the one and only Kevin Geiger. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for coming over on this fine day.
My pleasure. It is indeed summertime here in Beijing.
It is. We've decided. One of the happiest days of this show was when I realized that the air conditioning is just below the threshold by the time I'm done with my audio magic, so I can leave the AC on.
Yes.
Because it used to get sort of miserable this time of year.
Yeah, and it's we're at a nice threshold right now. And also we had a great weekend for those people who aren't in Beijing or weren't in Beijing this weekend. Sunday was just like one of those miraculous, gem-like days where it was sort of like being in LA again, right? You had like 70s Fahrenheit-wise, and the AQI was like 4.
Yeah, it was like, what? That's got to be a mistake.
I was shaking my phone like there's got to be like a 0 or another 0, 2 zeros at the end of this 4. But it was really one of those days that kind of fools you into thinking you should stay here longer than maybe you should.
I like that you say fools. Like it's like they're trying to put one over on you.
That's right. Lure you into staying for just one more year, re-upping one more time.
Well, I think we're sort of going to get into that here in a minute. We have our outline as usual, and we're going to start off we'll kind of name check this at a high level and plow forward into other topics that we can say more about. But one thing is, it's funny because after we did our last Fretful Laowai is when we went to lunch, and short version of a long story is you have joined us on my favorite season.
Yes, Brendan and I are finally in bed together, figuratively speaking.
Metaphorically speaking, folks.
And it's been really a wonderful opportunity. Brendan and I, as he said, went to lunch, and he was talking about people who'd be interested in coming in an executive producer capacity. And I really honestly believe he was not fishing for me.
Totally wasn't.
I heard more about the project and saw more about the project, I was like, hey, would you be interested in having me on board?
And honestly, that's the best. I mean, hand on a Bible or whatever. Absolutely was not. But I knew that you knew a lot of folks and that you would know how to maybe pitch it or present it. And I thought you would be able to point out weaknesses or issues and things like that. And so it was a very pure conversation. And I think you know because you saw the look on my face when you basically suggested. I'm like, oh, okay, that would be great.
Cool.
I hadn't considered it, but all of a sudden it made perfect sense. And of course, we have Jonathan Garrison on,
who we both know. I had never met until I joined the project. I knew him.
That's right. You knew him through the small world WeChat, China, Hollywood,
etc. And we had always been intending to meet, and now we finally did, of course, in the context of the project. And it's been really great to be involved in, the short film looks fantastic. The screenplay is amazing. And it's just for me, I mean, I've been involved in the industry to a fair extent and primarily on the animation side. And I've done some live action work, but this was really a chance to kind of enlarge my swimming pool and be involved with people who I know, like yourself, and also some people who I don't know so well, but would like to know better. And it's been great on all those fronts.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad to have you, and we didn't even talk about this. We were chatting, just catching up before we started doing this, and I'll talk to you when we stop the recording.
Sure.
Because I have some other projects that are animated type projects with a friend that we need to talk about. I want to maybe connect you to chat with this guy and see if there might be some common ground.
This is another reason why I'm still physically in Beijing, because these things tend to happen when you're actually here as opposed to somewhere else.
Well, you can't win it if you're not in it.
That's right.
Say, right?
Exactly.
Well, speaking of things that we're not in, the Shanghai International Film Festival.
Neither of us were there.
Neither one of us is going. It's kicking off, I think, technically this weekend. It seems like people are like next week is the big week for a lot of people.
Yeah. I know people who are there already.
Right. I'm sure there are people getting prepped. And I got invited to the PGA panel that's happening down there that Aries sponsoring.
Oh, cool.
And
so you got to say no.
I had to say
Too busy.
no. I'd love to, but our mutual lack of presence is just. I mean, those things are great if you have something. If you have a reason to be there. If you have a reason to be there, if you either have nothing going on,
right?
I mean, everybody always has something that's in the works, but if you have nothing going on and you can just you can freely go. And just, let me catch up with people. Yeah. This will be a fun panel to sit in and learn. And I can talk to those people and go to have these drinks. And that's always valuable for building, building our Hollywood guanxi and all this stuff. But those are also useful if you have a project and you have some gap that you're really trying to fill.
Yes.
And you think, let me go here and I'll see everybody who's in this general market. And we're both sort of in between. We actually, I mean, generically, I could say we both have enough going on that we don't have time to fool with that. It's like I'm looking for the things I'm looking for the feature and the New Zealand projects, and I'm doing my stuff. I'm doing my consulting stuff. I'm doing here. I got deliverables and deadlines. And so somebody asked me, and I'm like, I can't even think of. Yeah, the things I'm doing are why you would go there is to get those kind of things going.
Right. And the things you need are things that are maybe coming from some other avenue, and that there will be a point at which going to the festival makes sense. I know a lot of people who go just out of a sense of obligation, and they're almost shocked when you're skipping a festival. And I've been to plenty. And also there's that phenomenon where you see, especially like in animation festivals, it seems this is particularly endemic. You see the same people kind of traveling in a group around the world. So like all these are in Venice and then they're in Cannes and so forth. And it's like, you just saw these people a week ago, right?
Yeah.
In the same circuit. New? And what more is there to talk about? So, there's no sense of obligation. You use your time wisely and you use the festivals to work for you, right? When
exactly.
you need them. So, that's why we're not going this time.
Well, have you had any big, I mean, you don't have to maybe get into the details of what it was, unless that's a story you want to tell, but have you had one of those previous festivals where that was absolutely the key to the missing piece?
The Shanghai Film Festival, yes.
Yeah. So give it some love now that we
back in
threw it under the bus
2010, we were down there as Magic Dumpling, and this was before, coming into Disney China and all of that, but pitching projects, and that's where we met some people who we formed relationships with, consequently beyond that, and kept in touch with and met further, and then finally now are coming into play with projects that we're working on, 9 years later. That sounds terrible, but it's really
this is the story we talked about last time. Something that came back around after a long pause.
There's a courtship process. There are things that you talk about and then maybe get put on the shelf, or people who you meet, and people are on to whether you're a user or whether you're just there to actually meet people and get to know them and then just see what happens. And
Absolutely.
So, if you're trying to force something, that never works. But when you meet somebody, you get to know them, you check them out, they check you out, you do some things for them, right? They do some things for you. And then it's a more organic...
behind a body. Or...
Exactly. It's a more organic relationship.
You put this in your suitcase? What? No.
Right.
Kidding.
Just a piece of them. Just that we'll handle the rest. But the Shanghai International Film Festival is pretty well run. It sometimes puts the Beijing Film Festival to shame, quite frankly, in terms of the operations. I don't want to diss the BIFF, but they could take a cue from some of the others. But to the earlier point, there is a reason why you should go to festivals, but you decide when that is correct for you and for your project and so on. So,
exactly. Well, speaking of this, I've had some pretty interesting guests recently on my other new podcast, and starting today, I'm officially going to start pushing this a little bit more because, again, I want big fish. We'll do this. I will occasionally have a guest who's absolutely really aimed squarely at China and this expat sort of migrant experience. Yeah. But I'm really working to shift people toward If I Knew You Better.
Yes.
And I've been having some great guests, all of whom are having China-related things, so I'm cross-posting on Big Fish. But I'm really going to start just doing like a little blurb and say, hey, here's a link in this thing. Go there to listen to this interview. That's what I'm going to start doing this week. But recently, I had someone who you actually know fairly well for a long time. I had Stephen Katz. And they're doing construction.
That's right. So those of you who are listening, they're doing construction upstairs. We're just going to pretend this is a tree frog. So
tree frog. Yeah, we'll see. It hasn't been much. So far, there's no edits in this. So see, that was the first time we had.
We can leave that in.
I think a little bit.
Let's see. We'll see how it goes. Are we hitting the threshold of cutting it out?
Let's see. Let's see. We'll keep going.
Okay.
We'll keep going. So Stephen Katz would know all about that. Hey, speaking of that, let me just listen to see how bad this is.
Oh, I think we'll be okay.
I think we'll be okay. We'll keep on.
It's only if we get the sustained.
Yeah, that's right. That little tiny little bit is probably. Hopefully, we haven't lost you yet, dear listener.
Just like a chirp.
So you can listen to Steve Katz if you just dial back a week or two on this very podcast you're listening to now in your app or on the website that you're listening to this, or go to If I Knew You Better. Search If I Knew You Better. It's in all the podcatchers. But Steve Katz, has this interesting tale of coming up in the Northeast U.S. and getting his name going in New York, and then he ended up as a China guy after a lot of years in between. And when did you
I
actually
met Steven here in China when I came over in 2007. That was when I visited, and then moved here in 2008. And that little frog's really acting.
That's very rude of you, Kevin. Sorry.
Wow. let's just see how. Oh, let's hold on there for a minute.
Yeah, we'll have you pick up with meeting Steve.
So actually, let's talk about this for a second. Those of you who have never been to Beijing, the buildings here have, especially the international standard ones, have these incredible concrete walls that are almost impossible to hammer anything, to even to drill through. But they're trying right now to,
they have these hand drills that are like mini jackhammers. But this little thing that you hear a little bit in the background, hopefully a little bit, it sounds so terrible. Imagine that 10 times louder and nonstop. I had that for 4 months here when they were first destroying this place. Well, they finished the main work, and now they've just been doing some finishing. So there's nothing all day, then a little bit of tap, tap, tap from a hammer.
Right.
And then once in a while, a short little burst of that. And see, now I'm not even going to jinx this. Maybe that's all we're going to get. Maybe we're that. There we go. See, I did it. I jinxed us.
It's probably a picture going into the wall.
I think they're still doing the finishing work. So they may be trimming something to make room for a counter or a cabinet.
So I can go ahead and forge through with my Steve Katz.
Yes, please. Go ahead and forge ahead with Steve Katz.
Okay. So I met Steve in 2007. When I moved here in 2008, I got to know him a lot better. They at Xing did a test for us on an animated feature that we were developing that sort of morphed into the one that we're doing now. And Steve, I will say this, the great thing about your show, If I Knew You Better, is that I thought I knew Steve pretty well, both from his previous, the books he's written, the work he's done, the short film for Saturday Night Live, all of that. I knew about that stuff before I met him. And when I met him, we had meals, etc. But I still learned a ton of stuff I had no idea he was involved with. People I had no idea he knew.
The Michael Jackson
tutor
thing. For months at a time.
And even the SNL short, it was hilarious, like how he actually got that to come about.
I love that story.
Was incredible. And it really was like, a talented guy who does a great little piece, but still shows how you have to game the system in a way.
Right.
And really be ballsy to kind of just, get your shot. And that was really cool. So I actually left him a message on WeChat after the podcast to say, man, if I knew you better. I mean, really, it's.
So did he get back to you on that? You guys?
Yeah, he said it was a lot of fun. He looks forward to doing another one.
Yeah, we need to do a part two.
Some stuff to talk about.
We do. We unearthed a lot. So I'm not just I don't make any money off of this. This isn't like some crass thing where I'm trying to grab for your wallet. It's just there's a lot of effort, and I'm really happy to do high quality shows and get some ever higher quality guests.
And maybe a soundproof studio.
Yeah. See, if you listen to my shows, maybe I could take those numbers and show them to somebody to help me get a soundproof studio.
I think you're getting actually a lot more street cred right now from this drilling. So I think this is probably a plus. I think it's working.
Well, speaking of that episode, one of the nice messages I had, and I'm going to skip this bullet and come back to
Let's
this.
Skip a bullet.
So, one of the Facebook messages I had was from the publisher Michael Weesey himself. Right, and that was one of the books that helped put them on the map. And now cut to 30 odd years later, and they're there's them, there's Focal Press, and it's basically the two biggest like film, TV, media publishers in the world. And Michael Weesey Productions is huge, and so many of the classics, have been published by these guys, Save the Cat, and on and on and on and on and on. And so, Michael, who I'm acquainted with, and I talked about this briefly in the episode with Stephen Katz, but he basically wrote me really nice messages, and he said essentially what you said. He's like, I've known Steve 35 years. And I learned so much. I had no idea, and he was really complimentary, and so I won't butter my own biscuit by saying this too much. But he really was complimentary and positive, and if there's anything I could do, and I said, yes, I want you on the show.
Awesome.
And there is the version of like taking a breath because we're back and we're chatting in real time at this moment. And
that's a good ask.
And he said, absolutely, I'd love to. And we can do it focused around my memoirs, Onward and Upward, which came out a few years ago. And so I've got that now. He sent me a hard copy to the mailbox in LA, and I've got a PDF on my computer that he sent me. So I'll get to Michael Weese interview here pretty
fantastic.
soon. And the stories he has will be incredible. I know him well enough, and I know his story enough. Someone who I had who's going to be the episode. He's the episode. As you're listening to this, we're recording the day ahead. This show right now comes out on Wednesday. I also have just released the new If I Knew You Better, which features another Michael Weese author. I have started getting to do some pre-production reviews and blurbs for some of the books that are relevant that I'm interested in. And one of them they sent me in galleys.
Oh, cool.
Is this new screenwriting book.
Secrets.
Crazy, yes, by Waco Lin. He's from Taiwan, China, as we say. And he has worked a lot here in the mainland, but he's been living in the U.S. since he was a little boy. And this book is fantastic. And I don't get anything from promoting this. This is not meant to be self-serving. So this is mostly just another great crafty screenwriting book. It covers all the basics, but he has an interesting fresh angle. So I can see why they would have, frankly, made the deal with him just on the basis of that. But what makes this unique?
It's an actual book, too. You're flipping through it here.
Yeah, I'm looking for the table of contents to show you. He has a whole section on making Universal movies, and he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He has 7 chapters that are all about China stuff. And so this... He actually is one of these guys.
Kind of like a How China Works angle in a way.
It is a How China Works angle. And he talks about...
Copyright.
Let me show you really fast.
I like the chapter called Have You Eaten Yet?
Yeah. Churlama. Yeah, we ask everybody. So, for instance, he goes through and he... What I like about this is that he summarizes... I'm going to start recommending people to this, right? Because this is such a great summary of here's the shorthand if you are from the outside world and you need to try to deal with China. Here's the shorthand summary of what you need to know in terms of what content works or doesn't work.
Yep.
The issues of censorship, topics to avoid. Crime, religion, politics,
very specific.
Sexuality.
Overseas military.
Very specific. But he talks about what does the Chinese audience want, and see, he knows these things.
I like the white fish out of water.
He talks about what to avoid, right? White fish out of water. Chinese audience doesn't care. So he has had a lot of success. And he talks about, films that have worked. He basically has these 5, 6, or 7 chapters that really deal specifically with China, and it's useful for Chinese who want to work globally because he also is, by way of explaining to Hollywood people, quote unquote,
yes,
if you're a Chinese person who reads English and wants to work internationally, you read this, and the opposite is inferred. You get the other side as well, because he talks about here's there. Here's the issue,
right?
And here's how to bridge it. So the bridge works for both directions.
And now, what date is this book?
This is July 1 is the publication date. Yeah,
of last year.
No.
It's coming out.
This is in galleys. See, look at the first. It says,
I see. Okay,
it says blurbs.
Blurbs. Okay, so
I have blurbed it. Although David Goyer is the cover blurb.
I'm wondering how much of this he's going to have to rewrite. Like right now, because as we know, and one thing that we were talking about, previously is that things are changing in real time,
right.
In China as they do, and almost as soon as you put anything down, it's changed. And there are just some new, I wouldn't call them official regulations yet, but there's been a thing circulating on the internet that has been getting a lot of attention, a lot of...
I messaged you about it.
Yes.
The very thing about Kevin is like, that's great. Do you have a reference? He's been here long enough. You've been here long enough that you always want to see the
well, and also to see if it was actually something that my wife had showed me a few days earlier, the exact same thing.
And it was, yeah.
And I got her take on it. She said, this doesn't look official, but it definitely means something. And what usually happens here is that...
It didn't have the red stamp yet, but it was the way it was written was really specific.
So basically what this was a list of new restrictions, prescriptions on content in China.
Right.
Basically, one of the key points was like no fantasy elements, no ancient settings, and also no American elements, which made me laugh. I totally get the last one right now with the trade war.
Right.
It's very interesting to live in a country that's in a trade war with your home country.
I know. And that's very sad because we've had a lot of American actor friends. Well, 3 or 4 American actor friends, including a few of the biggest ones, who have been canceled from projects upcoming. And one guy, let's not say his name because I know it's a really sore spot for him, and he listens to the show sometimes. But he found out that he was being edited out of the project that he just co-starred in because he's American.
Yeah, and I mean, so this goes on, and I haven't, luckily with friends and so forth, I've been pretty lucky. I haven't experienced anything ugly. But I was in a taxi once, and the guy said, "Nisha Naliren, which country are you from?" And I said, "Washamego-ren," and he just went, "Ah." I was like, "All right, here we go." I just told him I'm Canadian. Oh, Canadian doesn't work either because of the Huawei thing. Anyway,
I'm just about. I normally say Lushenji-ren.
Yeah,
Los Angeles people.
I'm from Los Angeles,
and then because almost everybody likes LA, or they're interested in LA.
And they understand
LA
California's like a different.
They understand
country.
we're kind of like our own kind of weird.
Yeah,
and they know we don't like Trump.
Exactly.
Generally speaking, so we get a little bit of credit for that. I found.
But so looping back on this, then, so there are these things, and she said, well, this doesn't look official, but it's definitely something. And what often happens is that stuff will circulate unofficially, and
they track the feedback.
They track the feedback, and then the official policy does come out, usually very closely related to what you saw, right?
Yeah. It's like a trial balloon for what they're going to actually.
Exactly, a trial balloon. And so this, is something that when I was talking to my wife, she said, well, I believe, and she wasn't saying this based on any authority, but she said, it seems like somebody wrote this up based upon things which we know have been rejected as online series, either pulled off the air or just rejected from going on the air.
This was TV and online series related more specifically,
and that somebody
but it
went
referenced
ahead
some features
and
here
wrote
and there.
Reason. These were the things that got these pulled.
It was almost like an academic thing that somebody, like a think tank on the China national side.
Yes. And this stuff, I remember having dinner, and this isn't new, right? When I first came to China, back in 2007, I had dinner with a SARFT official, the State Administration of Radio, Film, Television, who was on the censor board, and was talking after a few drinks about just the process. And it was very similar in some ways to the MPAA. Like, you can show somebody's dick, but only for like a couple seconds and from the side, and they'll get you this rating versus that rating. And very similar, like she would say, well, in again, this is years ago, but she said in a Chinese film, you could kiss somebody across their shoulders, but if you start kissing down the body, that's out. If somebody's in bed with another person, they have to be covered by sheets completely, and they can roll over once in the sheets, but if they roll over 3 times, and it was, it became quite comical and sort of cute, actually, kind of charming.
Somebody's job was to figure out
to sit there.
Where do we go from cute to salacious somehow?
So this isn't new, but it is a little more pointedly directed at foreigners, especially like, the no American elements part. And we're Americans, number one. We traffic in co-pros and things that have American influence. So this is something that we can't ignore. Put it that way, right? We have to at least take it seriously and think, okay, if this is going to be a policy, what do we do about it? And in true China fashion, the official policies aren't as much trouble as the unofficial policies. Sure. Right?
How does it get applied when the rubber meets the road?
Yes, what actually happens.
The person whose job is to interpret it.
Right.
And your correspondence or lack thereof with it.
Right.
That's where the issue is.
Yes.
The letter of the law doesn't mean a damn thing to us as people who aren't.
And quite frankly, there used to be people who, I remember years ago, there'd be something like just involving the Chinese by themselves, something would be blocked. And then one guy, an executive producer type, would say, I'll handle it. And they'd go and they say, okay, it's no problem. We're fine.
Yeah.
And something, a conversation or whatever, a favor went on, and then it was no problem. Yeah. That's less prevalent now because of the anti-corruption campaign, the austerity campaign. I'm not saying that anything improper went on.
Right. It might have just been, that might have been the general policy, but if you could make a good enough case, and that person made the good case.
The back channel stuff is becoming less, which has its pros and cons. So anyway, we're in the midst of this, as filmmakers, as content creators, trying to sort through the weeds on what this means or doesn't mean, and try not to have our hair on fire too much, I guess, about it unnecessarily.
Well, let me let's talk more about that in just a second. And specifically, I want to mention this, and then let's get into that a bit. I do want to mention, when I was talking about podcast stuff, it had come up when I interviewed Steve Hoffman for If I Knew You Better a few weeks ago, and also cross-posted on Big Fish. You can hear the most recent one with Steve. And after the talk, we had a really nice conversation, and I don't think he'd mind me saying this. He basically said, from some of the things we got into that he didn't know that I had experience in related to Hollywood, because he didn't know that aspect of my story. He said, is there a podcast about you where you're the guest that I could listen to? And I've been a guest on a good handful of shows, but related to his point, and it's something that's current, because a lot of them have outdated stuff.
Yeah.
Just recently, just last week, it's the new episode. My friend Carl King, the multi-talented, he did the theme music on this show. He is an artist and a director, and he's a professional musician above all else, a composer and a cult rock guy, and he's very much part of like the whole Zappa universe world. That's where he lives, and I was a guest. He interviewed me when I was in LA, but it just posted. But it's all about my artistic roots, my whole kind of mini career in music and then getting into film, and it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
And it's, I gotta say, it's if you want to know anything about how I ended up this way, for better or for worse,
that'd be a great title for a podcast, by the way.
How I ended up this way. Well, yeah, maybe that's probably the alternate version of this, actually, if I knew you better. But I'm going to link that as well. And again, if you want to know more about me, I think that's a good place to start. I loved that conversation with Carl. So fun. You haven't heard it yet, have you?
Full disclosure, I have not listened to it
I know
yet,
how busy you are. I wouldn't
but I'm going to, because I do want to know everything.
Well, it's stuff that I don't talk about on here. I reference music stuff. I have a lot of adventures I talk about. Actually, Dweezil Zappa is one of his good buddies now, but I met Dweezil when he and his brother were judges.
Oh, seriously?
When I was on Star Search. I met Dweezil and I met Zappa in 1994.
Have you met Moon or Moon Unit?
No, but my old
she was
producing
born Moon
partner,
Unit and then changed to Moon. Right?
My old producing partner went to her senior prom when Valley Girl was the #1 show.
Oh,
they went to each other's proms because they both went to
Is that the Nicolas Cage Valley Girl film?
No, she had the song called Valley Girl.
The song, and then they made a movie. Though.
They had the movie with Nicolas Cage. Yeah, that song was not. I know the movie well. I think the song predated the movie. I think the movie predated the song, but I'm not sure. We would have to look that up. But I
was a big Zappa fan myself.
I'm a huge Zappa fan, and Carl is on his. I'm wearing actually the T-shirt. One of his animated shows, the pilot for the Oracle of Outer Space. And Dweezil voices the lead character. He voices this character, Gary. Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom is a sponsor. You watch the pilot. The poster for Big Fish is on the station. On this, it's on this. It's this pirate radio station in space, and so Big Fish is actually a sponsor of that, and so we're in there.
Awesome.
And there are all kinds of people, from the Zappa world, like Mike Keneally and Brian Beller, who play on his albums.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Joe's Garage was one of my favorites.
Oh, it's amazing.
I think the one song that left a big impression on me as a teenager. Why does it hurt when I pee? I was like, wow, I never knew you could write a song.
The questions you need to know the answer to anyway as a kid. So my somewhat awkward segue to mention it, I can segue out of this more smoothly because that really is this big backstory on my music past and how I sort of ended up here where I be today. And you and I have talked previously, and so let's talk again. You sort of just were mentioning this.
Yeah.
These ever-changing tides. What does this mean for us and our China outlook circa right now today? Like how's it looking for you today? I think you were talking, I'll let you talk about the whole.
It's interesting because we've talked about this really, I think, since the very first Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom about you're always kind of looking at reevaluating, or at least I am every year. Okay, how's it going? Should I should I re-up or not? Can I re-up or not? I mean, you're here at the pleasure of the powers that be in terms of your visas and all that. But just based on the opportunities that you have and also where you see the future taking you.
Right.
And I think I mentioned on one of the previous side dishes about, in terms of my quote unquote content development portfolio, putting more attention to things that are outside of mainland China, just to diversify, so to speak, so that all the eggs are not in the mainland Chinese basket. And that's actually been going pretty well, and was leading me to the point where I was thinking very strongly about maybe relocating from here even this fall. And it was something that I guess I didn't even tell you because before the recording, you were like, "What?"
Yeah, I didn't realize the relocating part. I knew I knew that you wanted to spend more time other places, But yeah, I didn't realize relocation was that soon. I thought that was maybe a couple of years down the track.
Yeah, and it's something that my wife and I
think I was pegging it to Claire starting first grade.
Claire starting first grade, yeah. She's 4 now. She just turned 4. And, we peg a lot of things, quite frankly, to what's going on with the kids. So now I've got, as people probably know if they've listened to this, my 4-year-old Claire, my 1.5-year-old Emma, and, their schooling and their experiences and their cultural upbringing, the language, the writing, just the environment, all of that, the relatives, is a big consideration. And so, my wife and I live here in mainland China. We have in-laws in Taiwan. I have in-laws in Taiwan. They're her blood, of course. But relatives in Taiwan, we have relatives in the USA. My parents, all of them are getting up there in age. In terms of the older generation, my parents, the grandparents. And you think about how much time you have left for them to see your kids, and also for me to be with my brothers, when to be with her sisters, blah, blah, blah. And you weigh that then against just, the vocation that you've chosen for yourself, the content that you aspire to create, the rent that you aspire to pay, that kind of stuff. And
the hours lost trying to connect on a VPN,
on the internet, etc. So we're always looking at, okay, so how's it going? Do we think we're going to stay here longer or not? Yeah. And we really were looking at, we spend maybe 75% of our time in mainland China, and the other 25% traveling Taiwan, the rest of the world, USA. And we thought, okay, we'd like to flip that and continue to spend maybe 25% of our time here, keeping the plates going, spinning, but the other 75% outside of mainland China. But then, and I told my wife, I said, if you see me slipping on this principle, because there was one particularly bad weekend where the air quality was horrible and we were all coughing and we're looking at the kids. And it's like, all right, we're out of here, man. That's it. And if you ever catch me weakening on this, you remind me, that I'm being a wuss. And she's
what was this about Saturday and the weather's perfect? And
then this weekend happens, right? Exactly. And like, but more importantly and more insidiously, I think, and perversely, I find, at least in my life, as soon as I say, all right, you know what? I've given up on this.
Wow.
A drill kicks in. As soon as exactly. I have a little drill that kicks in on my shoulder.
A little ray of hope, and then, that's why we're leaving. Good.
No, but as soon as I kind of said, all right, you know what? I think I'm done with mainland China, and, the things that I've accomplished here are enough, and I want to look elsewhere. Stuff started firing up here.
I know you're busy, and you're doing a thing with us now, although all this project is set in Paris, and we still will probably have some Chinese
But it came to me from being here with you, and the intersection of us here in this location. Right. So that doesn't mean those things can't happen elsewhere, because they do.
Sure.
They say that luck is when you put yourself at the intersection of preparation and opportunity.
Right.
But now we're looking at, all right, maybe we want, and also the kids are very happy in their school. They're healthy. We have a great circle of family and friends here. So it's like, okay, weakening. I feel myself weakening. And now I'm looking at staying here maybe one more year and just seeing where things take us. The animation project we have with our mutual friend, Trevor Yaxley. There's just a lot going on right now. But then every weekend I get on Skype with my, parents who are pushing 80, and it's just like, and they're just dying to see us. We're going to visit them next month.
Yeah.
But it's just, an annual few weeks, and then we're back here. So that's tough. It's difficult when you've got family who, as you know,
that jumps a couple of bullet points, but
let's jump the bullet points.
Well, my dad literally died, so he would have turned 80 today, and
that's tough. That just happened.
Yeah, a week ago. I'm saying today as we sit here, June 10th was his birthday, and it was I'm looking at my calendar from across the room. June 3rd, it was the morning there, and so it was evening here. So evening Monday last week, and we're recording Tuesday afternoon. So it's been a week and a day.
And my theoretical, my fear is the reality that you face of like having somebody pass away when you're halfway across the planet, and just dealing with that logistically, psychologically.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I won't get into the granular details so much. And actually, I've debated about. I don't know that anybody just wants to hear me rattle on about it for an hour. Because I think I probably have more to say about it than I would do in like a 1 hour solo podcast. And I'm not dying to say anything at this moment in any detail. and it's complicated. But friends of his from
family's always complicated.
Friends of his from he basically has two places that were really three places that were his hometown. Seattle was technically where he's born, but he graduated high school in Aiken, South Carolina, and spent decades in South Georgia and Albany, Georgia. Then he has friends in South Carolina and Georgia who are both going to have memorials for him within the next couple of weeks. And I'll write a little thing that they'll read at both of them or whatever. So, but it's a complicated relationship. And so in my case, I mean, some people, who knows how people judge, we had repaired the relationship. I made the effort to we were in a good place, basically the best place possible when this happened.
When's the last time you saw him?
I made a point when I was in the States before I came back to China this time. No, I made a point. I want to see my mom and her husband in Birmingham too, but no, I made a point to flew to Atlanta and I took a Greyhound bus to Aiken and spent a day and a night there, and then back to Atlanta and on to Birmingham and spent a few days there, and then back to LA. And I made it a point because we knew. I mean, I said my goodbyes. We knew that's the last time we'd see each other.
So you really had that feeling at the time.
Oh yeah. Saw him get frail, and again, it's a complicated story. I mean, like I said, it's what I would say, and this is more like general life lesson stuff, is he spent the last 20 years trying to make up for the first 60 in terms of amends. And
I think a lot of people do that.
I think that's not an uncommon story, probably. There's some pretty deep stuff there that I don't want to do disservice to by kind of being, by me being too glib about it. You're fine. You do you, Kevin. You
sorry,
do you. You glib away. You glib
tamp
away.
down the glib.
You glib away. Glib away. But I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, obviously, again, I know you have a close relationship. So if you have, depending on the type of relationship this is a lot of distance. And so that is highlighted. It's like, oh crap. I mean, I'm so fortunate that he had one old friend from the South Georgia and one old friend from the hometown from high school, we had lunch. Lovely lady. I can't believe she's 80. This woman seemed like 20 years younger at least, and the other woman is a bit younger. But both of them were able to go and deal with the on the ground stuff. And so I've been,
because you're halfway. I'm
halfway around the world, like literally more halfway around the world. And so but I was doing my stuff remotely. So authorizations for the hospital and the funeral home and all these different. I've been doing all that stuff at night remotely. But fortunately, they were able to deal with cleaning out his apartment, the assisted living, and
just dealing with mundane
all that stuff. And y'all keep most of this stuff. And this couple of small boxes, my mom agreed, because it's me. She agreed to stick it in the attic.
Okay.
So dealing with that. So that sort of highlights just being so removed again. I don't want to live back in the States necessarily. I mean, again, I love America. There are a lot of places I would live and comfortably, but my work has me going other places, but not necessarily here full time. I also want to flip it to where I'm here about 25% of the time.
You've been talking
That's
about,
my goal.
New Zealand, and also just with reference to America. I the same thing. I actually have a Plan Z opportunity that I won't go into detail about, but could take me back to the U.S. and actually looks quite attractive. But the thought of going back, even saying going back, you're not really going back, but you feel like you're going back to some place that you left for a reason.
Sure.
And that...
Well, you are and you did.
You are and you did. And this isn't the final destination.
Sure.
But you feel that the journey should then take you maybe someplace else. I mean, there's so much a world out there, that you haven't seen or haven't lived in.
That's always been my orientation. I don't have anything against where I'm from, and even the places that weren't always the great experience, such as where I live with my dad in South Georgia. Have a few friends still from there. Right. Although, and had some crazy fun memories as well as a lot of pretty horrible ones, so there's good and there's bad everywhere, but it's about, I'm not running from anything. I'm running to things. I'm moving toward I'm attracted to other things. And there's a lot of the world that I want to see before, all said and done. And speaking of places I've never been, and, I have a lovely girlfriend. And so I understand that the time to really go to Thailand is when you're single, if you're a male.
So you've been advised.
So I've been advised by men and women friends who know these things. But I'm going as a totally good boy. Our Elliot Zagman, who's a returning champion multiple times on my shows, lived a lot, had like 11, 12 years of China time, but he and his wife, who's also American, they live, she's with the U.S. Embassy, and they have a house with a pool in Bangkok. So, hi, Elliot.
Awesome, man.
Yeah,
High
buddy.
five.
Yeah,
Woo.
so I'm going to go. Now, it is rainy season, but I mean, hey, it's the pool and, you're already wet.
That's
so
right.
Who cares? So I'm going for my very first time. I'm going to Thailand.
First time.
Very first time to Thailand. Going this Friday through Sunday because I have a visa trip, and I thought, you know what? And I'd already planned this long before the whole thing with my dad. But I know he never got there. He never got here. He traveled a good bit. He went to Europe a little bit, and he spent a few weeks in Australia and like dove the Great Barrier Reef like 30 years ago and had some adventures. But the fact is, it highlighted that. It highlighted the opportunity when I basically had to deal with this visa trip. They never come up at a good time.
Yeah.
There's never, it's like, oh shit, I've got to go and get the stamp. I got to stamp out, stamp back in. And you're always in the middle of, for me, I'm always in the middle of something with like 2 flaming hot deadlines. And this is the world's worst time to like drop everything and go.
Yeah.
And I'll be damned if I was going to go back. Nothing against our friends in Mongolia, but I'll be damned if I was going to go back to that ghetto trip to Mongolia yet again, because you can either, I've flown to Hong Kong for breakfast, I've flown to Hong Kong for lunch and back when I had to.
Yeah.
I've flown to South Korea for
Right.
breakfast and back. And that's a waste of money.
Dude,
and
you gotta stay for at least a half
that's
day.
the point. Is so now I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna go. And yeah, so I'm going to spend a couple days
Well,
in Bangkok.
I'll give you a little. So I did a good boy trip to Bangkok myself as well back in 2006, I think. So this is before China, before my current life, family, etc. And I was actually there, sent there by Disney to speak at a conference. So I think
cool.
I also felt some incentive to be on my P's and Q's because I was going there as a company guy. But I have to say, it's first of all, you can
don't have to find a local clinic or anything.
Yeah, you can have a fantastic time there while being good. But it's very, very easy to get into trouble. Just even any kind of eye contact, even if it's not prolonged with anybody on the street, will get you propositioned. And when I say propositioned, I mean propositioned for almost anything. I'm not just talking about sexual favors, but buying a rug or, somebody selling vases or one thing that's quite common is you rent a tuk-tuk. And to take you around, and they just find good reasons or bad reasons to stop in front of this store. My tire's a little flat. Why don't you go to that store and wait for me while I fix it?
While
and
their
then,
cousins
as soon as you as soon as you walk in, you're just mobbed. So there's a fair amount of that, but the temples, the palaces, I mean, it's just amazing.
I hope I get
city.
to do a little bit of that because it is actually looking at the forecast. It looks like it's just pouring rain, like just nonstop this weekend. It's raining now. So we shall see if I get to do any of that on this trip.
Well, bring an umbrella.
That's what Elliot said. Well, what can I bring from Beijing that you bring an umbrella? So I'm like, okay, that's a good point. And shorts and t-shirts.
Or just get soaked, wear something waterproof and
I just have to deal with it, I guess. But I'm looking forward to
that. Sounds like advice whether you're being good or bad, actually.
Actually, hey, I see what you did there. Well, is there anything we didn't talk about that we should talk about? Did we?
No, I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't. As a dad, this is probably where people will just turn it off. Oh God, here we go. But this has been a particularly
is this the kid update. I've been seeing Emma's running around now.
Yeah, so the main point is that this particular month, both of them, Claire as a newly minted 4-year-old and Emma as, she's past the 1-year-old threshold and now almost 1.5, really took steps, cognitively, physically, just in terms of confidence, activity, language with Emma.
Okay.
Including just little colloquial stuff like stuff she gets from like okay, on the American side, okay,
awesome,
or ayya, on the Chinese side when she does just about anything, sits down, stands up. That's really been a joy to watch and to participate in. And I did some father-daughter activities with Claire at her school. It was like a sports day that every school does, but it's on different.
Those pictures were great.
Yeah, and I'm still recovering physically from the things we did that day. because just it really was more like parents' sports day than the kids' sports day.
It looked like the adults were doing the heavy lifting.
We were, for people who didn't see the pictures, the parents were forming human tunnels that the kids crawled under. We were carrying the kids on giant cloth scrolls back and forth in the gymnasium.
Yeah, that was wild.
And it was crazy, but a lot of fun. And really, like my daughter really enjoyed having dad there and mom doing things, and also having her little sister cheering her on from the side. So those simple pleasures are really the thing that keep me going more than anything else these days.
Well, I enjoy getting to live vicariously through you and Jonathan, and James, Lalon, people posting the pictures with their little kids, and it's been really cool for me to see just how much. And again, I know he's told me before, but then just in private as well as on this show, you don't see all the stuff. You don't see the crying tantrum or whatever. But obviously social media, you put everybody's best foot forward, including the kids.
We posted a photo once of Claire crying, and people were like, she cries? Yeah, of course she cries.
Oh, right. I think I remember that. But seeing how much just as the sister love thing is so strong with those two.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
It will ebb and flow, I'm sure, including their love for us will ebb and flow. But
well, right now, man, you have to keep these. The good thing about coming up in this day and age is you have all the evidence that once upon a time.
Yeah. You used to love Daddy.
Yeah, remember? Oh, yeah. Or I was going to say, you didn't hate your sister.
That's
See,
right,
look
you
at
didn't
this.
hate your sister.
Right.
So yeah, that's been great. And really that's what keeps us level-headed. And even you mentioned Jonathan, the cool thing about knowing him, but then actually meeting him in person through My Favorite Season, we've been hanging out on the weekends now with our families. His daughter is about the same age as Emma, about 1+. And so, singing activities and so forth. And then, a little business chat on the side. But it's really cool just to see the kids playing together. And that's what life's all about.
Well, cool, man. Well, Kevin, I'm really glad that we get to do this, man.
Me too, buddy.
And, we'll look forward to next time. And this summer vacation, you're never quite sure when summer vacation's over. So we'll see when we get to pick it up again. But I hope you have a nice summer.
You too, man.
Thanks, Steve.
Cheers.